Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we're going to be sitting down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing. We have Fantastic Planet, directed by Lene Laloux, The Last Unicorn by Jules Bass and Arthur Rankin Jr., we have The Thief and the Cobbler, or a.k.a. Arabian Night, by Richard Williams. We then have Inside Out, directed by Peter Docter and also co-directed by Ronnie Del Carmen. And finally, newly released, now in theaters, the Mac Daddy box office success Inside Out 2, directed by Kelsey Mann. So it is going to be a great animated film episode, folks. Stay tuned and enjoy the show. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Tommy boy, how's it going?
It's going okay. On this side of the table, how was your animated filled week?
Oh, it was a great week. I loved this week so much. It was nice to get back to kind of like a themed episode.
Sure.
And each one of these movies was just like great. Like nothing is really like a bad movie this week.
We'll find out how great they are. Yeah. I got to say, you really went esoteric on us on this one.
Well,
I mean, when you think these children's animated episode, nothing comes to mind like Fantastic Planet and The Last Unicorn. I mean, just always on my mind.
It's good.
The cast in Last Unicorn is absurd, like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, this is where I have these different lists, and I can't just squeeze in an animated project randomly on it. So, folks, if you didn't hear last episode, we're going to be doing what we did with the Spider-Verse episode, where, with a animated project, I do 5 other animated films, and honestly, I really reached deep on some of these. Thief and the Cobbler was something I was dying to check out and kind of dying to research as well, as far as writing the review and researching the film. Fantastic Planet has been on one of my oldest lists, period. I think it went back to 2016 on the note. Yeah, I mean, Last Unicorn, it is the unofficial Rankin and Bass director's study. Because
I love it.
They, of course, did the 2 of the Lord of the Rings cartoons that we did on the show. And yeah, it's just great. It's great.
Okay, I mean, still weird. We're going to find out how good it is. Definitely The Thief, and I don't know if people know about The Thief and the Cobbler and all that. So we'll get into that when we get to it, because it's 2 films technically, and production hell, from what it sounds like a 3-decade production hell to get an animated kids film made.
Yep. So
we'll kind of get into that. That was a lot of research down that rabbit hole. Other than that, any other opening notes?
No.
I'm just going to jump into it. Okay. Well, we are jumping back about 51 years. We're going back to 1973. This film is called Fantastic Planet, and this is French, directed by René Laloux. And definitely set this up. One, why was it on your list forever? Why is it well known, or where did you hear of it? Why did you want to watch it? What's it about, and how'd you like it?
Sure. So this is a French experimental animated film that, like we said, been on my list forever. The whole movie looks like a progressive rock album cover, and I just needed to see it. I needed to see this.
Okay.
This apparently inspired the cover for a Queen album, and I personally think a lot of the art looks like what we see on Emerson, Lake and Palmer, ELP records like Tarkus. It really just has that kind of semi-psychedelic, but definitely sci-fi style to it. I'm knocking this off of multiple lists here, folks. Sci-fi, animation, foreign films, 70s films, but this one was a pick for me this week, especially since it is no doubt the most adult among the very G-filled week, G-rated filled week.
And the funny thing is, this is rated PG, but still, like when I put it on the site, in the genre, I still just put adult.
Yeah.
So people are kind of aware, at least.
Yeah, it's definitely a little trippy, a little psychedelic.
There's nudity in it.
Yeah. There's
so not very PG as we know it today.
Yeah. I mean, I think in addition to that, nudity is really the alien worlds of why you wouldn't show a child this, because like some of the designs are scary. Yeah, it's just like it's so shocking.
It's the 70s. This is like Jaws being rated PG.
Yeah, true. That's so true. So true. This is the first feature film out of 3 total features from director-writer René Laloux. All of them animated and all of them sci-fi, so I expect we're going to be great friends. Actually, I think after doing the research for this review, I'm much more excited for the following 2 films. The next being Time Masters in 1982 and Gan Dahar in 1987. Time Masters is actually a collaboration with the legendary French concept designer and artist Mobius, who we actually touched on in the Jodorowsky Dune documentary. So a little bit of a connective tissue there, and something I might squeeze some more time in with Renee in the coming weeks. So
so this is her earlier work too.
Yes.
So we're probably seeing it at its roughest state.
I believe his.
How about that?
Yeah. Well, and then we got Kelsey Mann later on. It's just like tough. For now, Fantastic Planet is a sci-fi animation that I want to describe in as plain English as possible to set up an attempt to make the movie have a clear hook, if it's for you or if it's not. We are set on an alien planet where humans exist in a primal slave capacity. The society of the planet is run by, bear with me, colossal blue aliens, like giant blue aliens, with near, magical, one might say fantastic technology. These aliens refer to the humans as pests, have them as domesticated pets, and our serious political concern for this alien society, understanding their potential for evolution and reproduction rates. We follow a slave boy turned house pet, Tear, who eventually escapes with technology designed to teach the aliens in an attempt to liberate the masses through education. It's very 70s sci-fi. It's very late 60s sci-fi as well. This right here is in the wheelhouse of heady Star Trek episodes, Twilight Zone episodes, and the inferior human angle feels very close to OG Planet of the Apes 6 years earlier. I would say, there is a social issues aspect to these characters, and I think it just feels right, like alongside so much of late 60s writing, and still can hit today. Like good sci-fi, I feel like these type of social messages, if they're there, fantastic. If not, that's fine too. But more often than not, what we're getting out of the late 70s or late 60s, early 70s still hits today in a lot of ways as far as the social messages. I would say this movie is a ride. This movie is something else.
Only an hour and 12 minutes, by the way.
Yeah, really. That's actually why I enjoyed this week, too, because it was just like, these movies are really short, and I can, especially when it came to Thief and the Cobbler, watching kind of 2 movies, it was nice. From the psychedelic soundtrack to a utopia sci-fi spin, the whole film is a vibe, and many scenes play out for visuals alone. And let me tell you, this has one very groovy soundtrack, I might add. This sounds like our theme, to the show. I would say my favorite are a handful of travel scenes we get, almost a la like Lord of the Rings, Jackson trilogy, that a lot of time is spent traversing the planet, actually creating some weight into what, how long and how far the characters are traveling, even with the short runtime. The designs of the planet speak for themselves. Creatures, plants, the architecture, all feel closer to a Salvador Dali painting than anything I've seen before. And it is awesome, folks. I mean, this is a really, awesome sci-fi design, out there, imagination sparking, and just something else. I would say it's an obscure anime reference, so bonus points to anyone who knows it. May not be anyone, but this reminded me a lot of the film Angel's Egg, which is definitely due for a revisit. where it kind of just pulls you in with this bold world design. And it's just at its best when that stands alone without any explanation. I feel like when we get more dialogue in this film,
it suffers.
Yeah, it's like I liked not having answers. I liked it being, wow, let's kind of piece this together and like, what is this society and what are the power dynamics between these humans and giant blue aliens and whatnot. When they talk, when they kind of get lost in the weeds with it, and that's where the movie kind of falls a little bit.
So, I mean, you obviously are kind of you like this film, is what it sounds like. How much was the animation style keeping you? 50 years ago, just pre-Pixar, and I would say pre kind of late to mid 80s.
Yeah.
Pre that, it's, we get some classic Disney animation stuff and some of those like the cartoon style animation.
Yeah.
How was this keeping you, or how fluid was it? Because some of the stills and some of the videos I watched, it's almost like it's very... I don't know. It's very drawn.
Yeah,
animation,
very minimal as well.
Yeah, and almost pastel at sometimes. Was it keeping you engaged enough?
Well, that's where you hit the nail on the head. As far as if there's something that drags down this movie, it is that animation.
Okay, all right. So
and it's something I wanted to kind of hone into because all of these films I'm looking at. Yeah, it's about the story and the animation itself, but it's also about like little things like movement and how dynamic what's going on screen.
Mouth movement.
Yeah.
So kind of you. I mean, and you'll probably get into it then. But what would be the best of both worlds is take the same exact film, but with a reanimated recut.
Oh, sure.
Of today's standards.
Also, my dream after watching this, dream not only it being like a French film is like for Denis Villeneuve to make a live action version of this. Kind of go back to Arrival vibes, and I'm telling you, it would be so awesome. It'd be great.
I wonder if Zack Snyder's interested because all the blue people. It'll be like what is it, the Dr. Manhattan or Mr. Manhattan?
Yeah, they use the same group. Yeah. While the designs of this world are super surreal and just wonderfully unique for any sci-fi, even till today, what suffers here is that animation and movement on screen, which is fairly basic even by 70s standards. The 70s are not a good decade for animation.
No.
Even Disney is not giving, this is way pre-Disney Renaissance, which we'll obviously kind of talk about for Thief of Cobbler.
I'm trying to think what the 70s Disney was.
It's like...
Is that the Jungle Book?
No, it's like Aristocats.
Yeah.
I think one of the 101 Dalmatians, if I'm correct.
Okay.
And then just a lot of live action trash in the 70s. Like you get I think Dark Matter or Black Hole or something like that. They were doing a lot of work with puppets. Just not good.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird period of animation.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to have Rankin and Bass coming up because they made The Last Unicorn in the 80s. When did they do the Christmas stuff?
That's in the 70s.
That's 70s.
Yeah.
Some of the most successful stuff then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And going back to our reviews on those, we referenced like Schoolhouse Rock. Those were the type of animation styles in the 70s. And all of them really not great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So... it's kind of tough.
I love the Christmas ones, but that aside, yes.
Yeah. Often we don't have more than one figure on screen being animated at a time, and it really shows in scenes with big crowds once Tear gets back to the other humans and is trying to educate them to kind of have an uprising against the blue people. It's just like one person is talking at a time, and it's just very noticeable that nothing else is being animated on screen, The shame of it is that this simplistic animation really just drags down some incredible sci-fi visuals. I feel like there's some really breathtaking stuff here that sparks the imagination, like I said, but many scenes will blur fantasy and alien aesthetics in such a way. Like, I would kill for a Magic the Gathering set of this world. It's not sci-fi all the way. I mean, it's still like more fantasy than sci-fi, which I like a lot. But for every cool machine or mind-blowing creature they throw on screen, there are 2 or more scenes of people talking with one mouth moving.
Ooh,
Nothing else moving.
Yeah.
And that hurts the medium of this being a film first. If this was concept art, if this was an art book, if this was something other than a film, I feel like I would not hold the animation itself, the motion on screen, so heavy. But I really do. And
It's so much more difficult to keep interest.
Yeah.
With that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
It just really is.
Yeah. So believe me, I was rooting for this to be a deep cut sci-fi gem, and no doubt it's for anyone like myself that adores design and concept work. But for a week highlighting the medium of animation, this came out a bit lukewarm and is a recommendation only if you're on the hunt for uncovering unique projects from the past. With that said, we're going to go ahead and give Fantastic Planet 1973 a 64.
Okay. I mean, at 64%, that's pretty much right there. Good movie.
Yeah.
And kind of against all odds. I don't know. You know what I mean? Oh, that's what I wanted to run by you. So I wanted to do this after to see if I did a good job.
Okay.
Because I was trying to figure out what do I put as a summary of this film.
Yeah.
So I have a French experimental adult animated science fiction art film that tells an allegorical story about humans living on a strange planet dominated by giant humanoid aliens who consider them animals.
Yes. Beautiful.
But I think such a long French just a French experimental adult animated science fiction art film.
You maybe drop art film. It really is more.
That's what Wikipedia had.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess art film comes into play is that it's deeply psychedelic. You know, it's like a trippy movie.
Yeah.
You know,
64% is a good movie.
I think so.
That's you know what I mean?
I think
For
it
us,
also
that's a good movie.
Balances. You gotta understand that this movie in particular is very hyped online. I think Rolling Stone gave it like number 30 in best animated pieces of all time or animated films. I feel like. It is for someone, it is for me even, but I even with it being my wheelhouse and everything I want out of like a heady sci-fi from the 70s. That animation cuts it down. And for a week 4 animation, this was actually not one of the shining examples.
Yeah. Traveler Beware.
Yeah.
That's what's great about the podcast as a companion piece with the real site.
Absolutely.
Because the 64 doesn't exactly say it all, technically,
Yep.
when you have these weird projects like this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that was 1973. Let's jump to 1982. We are with our boys again, Jules Bass, Arthur Rankin Jr., which is great that I love this. This is like our third film.
Yeah.
And right off the bat, an animated film comes out now, and really Pixar in the mid-90s kind of did this where it's like, who's going to be the cast? Who's going to be the cast on this one?
Sure,
it's such a big deal.
Yep.
And it's almost like half of the movie in the making.
Yep.
But this, 1982, they're grabbing some stars. I mean, we have Alan Arkin, Jeff Bridges, Mia Farrow. We have Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
And then, boom, Angela Lansbury, who's crushing it.
Yeah.
You know what Murder, She Wrote? 12 seasons.
You're bringing up Murder, She Wrote.
Angela Lansbury, 12 seasons. Okay. I had no idea. She only passed away. I think she passed away in last year or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Or 2022. She was like 96 or something. Incredible. Anyway, huge voice cast.
Yes. And I like your comment because it really is before that era that casting choices were part of the marketing of animated films. You know, you see that in the 90s with Disney, Pixar, even Studio Ghibli. For going into the early 2000s.
Yeah, do you think that it's almost a thing of it is a marker for actors to know if they've made it to a certain level? It's like when you get the call to be somewhat on the main cast of an animated film,
right?
You must be big enough.
Yeah.
That, or you must be low budget enough.
That's the thing. I think now that's absolutely the case. In '82, when this came out, probably more so on the low budget side. It's just like, all right, I'll pick up some work here.
You think so?
You know?
Yeah.
And we hear that in kind of Alan Arkin's performance and a little bit of Jeff Bridges as well.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah.
But there is a thing today. I mean, sometimes we'll have a Kung Fu Panda 4, which like cut the budget down big time because it's just not paying celebrities.
Sure.
That's when you get the Aquafina in there and everything. Sure. But really,
Inside Out 2, there's drama around that, which we'll touch on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, for the main stage, the big animated lately for like the past 20, 25 years was you have to be a certain status to get these roles.
Yeah.
And I think when you do, you get, and it also here's millions of dollars for standing in a sound booth.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's that. Yeah.
But I am of the opinion that a good voice makes a difference. You know, when a good voice connects, and to be fair, low budget or not, you see it in Christopher Lee for this movie. I mean, Christopher Lee
awesome.
kills it.
Yes,
kills it. I mean, when does he not? But yeah.
Last Unicorn. I was not aware of this film.
Yeah,
and I probably come across it just doing Rankin and Bass stuff. But you know what I mean. No tentative interest.
Yeah.
So what are we getting? What it set it up for us? And once again, how'd you like it?
Well, this is a great family movie. In a week, I need to now turn a quick 90 degrees to make sure that we're doing family movies. But a while back, just a little bit of background for those who have not been listening to. When did we do the Lord of the Rings ones? Definitely last year, right?
Yeah, I'll have to go back and check.
A while back, we covered the Lord of the Rings animated films, 2 of which were done by the directing duo Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass. In addition...
They did both of those, huh?
Yes, they did Hobbit and Return of the King. And then that middle one...
For some reason, I thought they... Oh.
That middle one was done... I'm drawing a blank now.
There were 3?
Yeah, there was Hobbit...
yes.
Fellowship, and then Return of the King. And Return of the King has the... Oh, no, I'm sorry. Fellowship had the condensed Two Towers version.
That's right. Yeah.
But in addition to their primary fame coming from a huge amount of rerun Christmas TV movies, I found myself curious of one of their only feature films. This is not a TV movie, and one of their last films, period. And today we're going to tackle it, The Last Unicorn from 1982. This is a proper fantasy adventure film based off of the 1968 book by the same name. And I think it kind of makes sense. This is very... I don't say this as a negative thing, but it's very tree-hugging movie. This is very, very, very hippie-ish in its approach to fantasy, but not too unlike, some of those early, like, Tolkien stuff. And definitely in the wheelhouse of our 2 directors. We follow the journey of a unicorn led to believe she is the last of her kind, hunted down by a spectral red bull. Along the way, we pick up a good old regular D&D party. We have an amateur magician named Schmendrick. I kid you not, that's Alan Arkin's character. The thief Molly Grew, and a doofus knight, Prince Lear. When the last unicorn is morphed into human form, she begins to lose her purpose in finding the rest of her kind, but soon she will discover the terrible truth that stripped their magic from this world. Let's start with that voice cast. I mean, pretty decent voice cast here, and my note alongside your note is all pre-Disney 90s. 90s Disney is really where we see that kind of broken through in the Disney's Renaissance. Jeff Bridges is the same year as Tron, so kind of an interesting year for him.
It is a big year for him.
Yeah, kind of 2 weird projects for Jeff Bridges starting out. You went through them already, Tom, but I mean, really, our boy Christopher Lee, let me tell you, is just such a good villain. I will take him as every villain.
Hell yeah.
We're probably not long from getting CGI reproductions, hologram actors. Christopher Lee, he's every villain now. I'm cool with that. This is up there with Saruman and Count Dooku. Really great stuff. So, I feel like the style, his character King Haggard, and his castle is just such a wonderfully corrupt design. Even his clothes, and this counts for Prince Lear's as well. It almost looks like kind of post-apocalyptic. Like there's weird, like broken, corroded metals on it, and it looks like more like an officer uniform. Just an interesting mix of fantasy going on here. And that's really where I'm coming away from a lot of appreciation for Last Unicorn, that it's how the fantasy elements are presented. This does have the similar folk music spin.
Yeah.
They love this folk music. I thought by the 80s we were going to maybe get like something synthy. I would have loved a really like hammy synth soundtrack with this, but yeah, it's all folk music.
Yeah, it is. And I think you brought it up when we did, I don't know, either The Hobbit or the Return of the King one, where it's very, was it Jim Crow?
Yeah,
Jim.
Or Crocer.
Yes.
Croce.
Yes.
I forget what the guy's name is. Yeah.
Anyway, that guy.
Yeah.
It's like, the box number 10 guy. Yes.
Yeah.
It's for some reason, they love it with this kind of stuff. Like, again, not much in the Christmas stuff that they do. They keep that very genre-based. But it's kind of out of left field.
Yeah.
When they do this.
I think it just, in those early days of nerd fantasy or adaptations of fantasy works, I I just think that's just what you paired with it back then. It's like it needed this like old timey feel. So
and so people know we're not just talking about like transition music or background music. Oftentimes,
it's full songs.
Right, it is full on musicals essentially.
Yeah, this has less actual like audio tracks, but it does have some notable people working on it. Multi-platinum songwriter Jimmy Webb does the songs themselves for this, and the music is even performed by the band America. I'm not,
That's kind of cool.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool.
I mean, even not being too much of a fan, I feel like that's interesting. So, my thoughts here are similar to the folk music used in the Lord of the Rings setting. Sometimes it works, sometimes it just really doesn't. Critically for this review, just might prove to be one of the more dated aspects of this. I feel like this was a very special movie, did not rush, took its time, and built a very gentle, wonderful fantasy children's story to it. If there's anything that's going to lose the intended child audience, might be some of this folk music, and it's just gonna be, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to land. Basically,
it's definitely not our bag.
Yeah. So, what I enjoyed in this was how much of a pure fantasy it was, and that really being the highlight. This is a real high fantasy with full magic and mythical creatures, but it's how these concepts are introduced and unpacked in the film that really kind of separates this and propels this up to a much higher rating for me. I like concepts like man not being able to see magical creatures because they forgot and they were kind of like stripped of that sense because of, hunting down unicorns and different magical creatures. The lore, the unicorn, and other creatures are revealed through like characters' reactions, which just feels very natural and didn't feel like I was just being like hit with a like a block of text of like, okay, what animal is this? What's their weaknesses? Okay, right. It just felt like, wow. It felt like good writing as far as like how to introduce these type of fantasy concepts. I think my first reaction to this was to assume it was just kind of lumped into some King Arthur type shorthand, but there is a lot of interesting world building that goes on here that makes it totally feel distinct and beyond the intended kid demographic, something worth checking out for fantasy nerds. I feel like this was a really good fantasy
It hits that
movie.
much. Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Absolutely. And in fantasy movies, it kind of got me thinking. I mean, we don't get pure fantasy anymore. And even back then, I feel like pure fantasy...
In the animated realm or in general?
In general.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, what would you say Game of Thrones is?
Low fantasy, for sure. Well, there is magic. And there are magical creatures.
I mean, same thing.
Same
thing with Lord of the Rings.
Fantasy.
I mean, same thing with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Which is, the show and everything like that, and the movies coming out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's there.
Yeah. I guess
the Dungeons and Dragons movie did okay last year.
It's so true. So true. Yeah. I actually, any news on that? Is that continuing to the franchise they wanted it to be? Hasbro? But yeah, even being a feature film project, I feel like we do get some fragments of Rankin Bass isms, we'll call it. Just some of that janky movement and animation coming off unintentionally comedic. It's like when they were animated Frodo, and he's just always like, he's always smirking.
Yes, the facials. Yes, the facial stuff. Not to mention sometimes just weird animation.
Yeah.
Like they did faces and like. The dwarves were done really weird.
Yeah.
How was some of that? How was some of the creature work in this?
I think good, except for just like some moments that definitely feel intentional. Like horses will laugh at jokes. And again, I mean, it's a talking unicorn. What is the difference between these low horses? But yeah, it's just unintentionally funny in a lot of moments where it's just like, what is this? And as far as that note as well, kind of as far as the problem in the low budgetness, maybe some of the earliness of this is actually line delivery. Like I said, Alan Arkin and Jeff Bridges, not the best line delivery. Jeff Bridges especially scary close to so bad it's good in ways. He runs into a room at one point, like a kitchen, and he's complaining that the unicorn turned human is not like in love with him. And it's just like, it's such a bad take. It's just like, I feel like screaming, like, just one more, Jeff. Come on. Otherwise, I really did think this was a solid animated movie. It captures a entirely different feeling than any other kids movie I've seen in a while. and certainly, I mean, any other kids movie that would be coming out back then as well. It's a little weird. It's a little untraditional. A little both for kids and adults. But super unique animated project with just beautiful animation, a beautiful fantasy world as well. Takes its time to not cheapen its world with jokes, with goofy characters, and there's a certain seriousness to it that's where I feel like it takes its world building seriously and thus makes a good fantasy film out of that. You know what I mean? It's kind of what we always talk about, like, don't chip away at your genre. Really, it's something special, and I feel like that is, the start of the big highlights this week that I was happy to watch. A really beautifully animated film, and for my money, probably the best Rankin Bass has in their catalog. Wow. We're going to go ahead and give The Last Unicorn, 1982, a 72. Jeez. Yeah. You're not about that?
I'm surprised. I'm just surprised. That's all. I mean, The Hobbit got 65. Return of the King got 62.
Sure.
And
I definitely agree with those.
And I'll tell you, 72 is, well, actually, I think 72 is our classic. If we have an animated film, if it gets a 72 normally for the daily ratings is like a pretty good film.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of what it is for animated, but this number comes up very often for animated films.
Interesting.
And so I think once you're 72, it just naturally hits a mark on the animated side for us.
Interesting. Okay.
If you go through the site, it's impressive.
How many animated are 72?
Yeah. I'm surprised at that, honestly.
Yeah, it was a great movie, a solid deep cut, and once again a turning point as far as like this was an excellent family film. Very old, certainly, has some cobwebs on it from music and vocal performances and whatnot. But as far as the story being told and the fantasy conveyed on screen, I thought this was excellent.
Fantastic! Wow, 72 for The Last Unicorn. And where are you finding this stuff, by the way? Like, are these difficult films to find?
No, Last Unicorn was actually on Prime for free this month. So,
fantastic.
Transitioning into the next one, not so much. The next one is as far as deep cut as you get. But
so the next one we have down as The Thief and the Cobbler, directed by Richard Williams.
Yeah,
but it was The Thief and the Cobbler, which I think technically got released in 92, but really the main release was in 93. Also going as the name The Princess and the Cobbler in 93.
Yes.
Then in 1995, after a Miramax re-edit and recut, we have Arabian Night, which is also an established thing. There was a recut, a re-edit called The Thief and the Cobbler Recobbled?
Recobbled cut.
And that came out in 2013.
Yeah.
Okay. You watched, what do you want to start with, Arabian Night? Or
The whole thing.
Okay. So we'll toss it to you. You can kind of run down the process of making this film and why was it hell? And it changed hands so many times and it actually still became a thing, which is kind of impressive. It didn't get left on the floor.
Absolutely.
So go down the name changes, the time frame of it, and lastly, what is it about?
Yeah, absolutely.
How did it turn out?
Well, I mean, really, folks, I am so excited to talk about this project. It is, just such a fascinating production story, not unlike our discussion around Mad Max Fury Road a few weeks ago, of just like, this is a passion project. This is Richard Williams to a T. The fact that, it got made at all is kind of incredible. Originally, The Thief and the Cobbler started as a production in the 1960s and in development for 3 decades due to its complexity and animation styles, and something that we'll definitely unpack a bit. If there is a reason to check out any versions of this film, it's for the animation. This is... wow, I mean, this is beyond a visual feast. This is something else. I don't think I've ever seen an animated film, anime or otherwise, like this movie. Oh, yeah, this was incredible.
And that was part of the reason why, like, going crazy over budget, it taking for years and decades in development, a lot of it was due because of the, like, just the technical animation that had to go into it, correct? The tech wasn't there yet?
Unfortunately, there's not really an easy answer with that.
Okay.
I feel like probably a good 50% is Richard Williams himself. Apparently, the dude took very long on his production times.
Okay.
Would be kind of self-crunch with his production, where he's just like working overnight and just pumps something out and hasn't worked on it for the entire duration. So maybe, not the best business partner, which
Right.
leads to the problems of this. But yeah, there's really a whole slew of reasons why this got delayed. The film weaved in and out of self-funding by its creator Richard Williams, exchanged studio hands from WB to Miramax, and not unlike many projects we have seen in recent years, fell victim to severe re-edits that drastically changed the experience of the film. Flash forward today, and you have two choices to watch. The 1995 theatrical release, named Arabian Night, largely considered to betray Williams' original vision, but a fully complete film. So I wanted to watch it and will be scoring it. And second, a version referred to as the recobbled cut. The true version of this film completely free online. You can find it on YouTube. But missing large gaps of animation replaced with the original storyboarding and overall unfinished. The reason why we're covering both is that Arabian Night, once again, isn't Richard Williams' vision, and we'll get into some of the differences in story there. But when it comes down to Thief and the Cobbler, though it is unfinished, I mean, the animation is breathtaking. This is one of the most detailed animated projects I have ever seen. This is
I'm shocked at this.
This is wild. I really don't understand. Well, I guess I do understand because it didn't get made. So I guess I do understand that it didn't come to fruition in the way that Richard Williams wanted it. But I think absolutely the type of projects I like to uncover as far as like deep cuts. This is it. I also understand that this could possibly open a black hole for future reviews where director's cuts have to be considered side by side. I mean, from Blade Runner to Justice League to, God forbid, that R-rated Rebel Moon that I may have to review. This was a real watershed moment for the podcast because I myself was wondering which version to watch, and if anything, what was worth your time.
Yeah.
So I wanted that answered for myself. That's why I wanted to go ahead and tackle this. The movie is an absolute labor of love from the animator Richard Williams, like we mentioned, and I think it's important to go over some of his work. Early projects include 1971's A Christmas Carol and also the Pink Panther series, which might give you an idea of how smooth the motion of his characters are, especially Pink Panther. A result of Williams' well-documented, painstaking animation process. Williams was kind of infamous among other animators, all admitting that he was the best illustrator around them, but just really bad with his work habits. And that's how we get a 4-decade spanning project. But a landmark film that will define his career was leading the animation work in 1988, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, something well overdue for us to cover.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And kind of also difficult to track because he's on these animated projects. He's also like second animator on a lot of different projects coming up in the business. But never really like directs himself. This is also like a first go at a big, Herculean task of this film. So once again, pieces of where it just did not come into play. It did not, come out all right. The Thief and the Cobbler is referred to as his greatest work, though, and if there was one project for him to actually direct, I am glad it was to attempt this insane animated film. Story-wise is where these two edits of the film are going to differ the most. The recobbled cut lays the groundwork of the cobbler falling in love with the princess, and the thief's comedy being antics trying to steal everything in sight. It's a bit longer, it's a bit darker, but most importantly, it's confident that the visuals are interesting enough to stand on their own. There's not like jokes a minute or anything in this. It's not trying to be anything other than this like visual feast on screen. The theatrical version, Arabian Night, features two main changes. A much larger voice cast, including our normally silent protagonist, voiced by Matthew Broderick, and multiple music sequences are added in, most likely to compete with the Disney Renaissance of the 90s, where otherwise there are no musical sequences. And one area of the film that overlaps in quality is once again, a truly great villain. I think that's also why I was happy this week. Is just like we had good villains, good cartoony villains. Zigzag the Sorcerer is wonderfully voiced by Vincent Price in both versions and is excellent. Just like such a hammy villain and just so wonderfully animated. He's like, I don't think he has a normal stature. He's just always like moving around, and yeah, it's great. It's great. In the wake of Aladdin coming out in 1992, this setting, this story comes off as, honestly, a shameless ripoff, no doubt resulting in some of the film's poor reception on its theatrical release a few years later. Also, an aspect that gets worse with the theatrical cut. The theatrical cut is, just only a worse film than what we see in this recobbled edit. A street rat and a princess falling in love, an evil court sorcerer with an evil bird, a fat sultan father that is being manipulated. It goes on. I mean, the evidence is damning. It really is damning. But I need to stress that the big production run on this film was being done in 1989, and instead should be something we actually side-eye Disney a little bit on. Disney was also involved in funding in the early days of this project through Spielberg. Spielberg brought Richard Williams on to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I think Disney just got ripped off Aladdin.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's great. That's wild.
Now, granted, as it plays out, it came out of the gate second. So Aladdin gets the credit, as far as popular audiences.
But you definitely think they were in there stealing. They had their fingers on it, and they just took it.
I think they saw this and they said, we can punch this up
a
Disney movie.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They can make
and
it less about like
faster.
this anime. Absolutely.
They put in the Disney machine and just let it run.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially focused on because Richard Williams has, again, these long stretches where he's either not working on the project or he's too obsessed with a certain animated sequence. A little bit of a time capsule. The reason why you watch either of these films, folks, is the animation here is unlike anything I've seen. Western, Japanese, CGI. When you realize that all of this was hand-drawn, you realize that Richard Williams is either a genius or a madman. I mean, there's no in between. Characters are far too wild in shape and too varied in design to come close to anything comparing it to Disney or really anything coming out at the time in 95 or even the 80s. If anything, with Warner Brothers being involved, this felt like an evolution of a Chuck Jones-style Looney Tune cartoon with how the motion of characters communicates every emotion, even if that means warping their body into hundreds, thousands of shapes. These characters are mercurial. They are full cartoons. There really is never a moment that they are just like normal people on screen. Also, so many action sequences, especially for the thief, feel like they have the rhythm of like a Roadrunner Coyote cartoon, but just 100 times more complex. They're about like the antics on screen. It's about kind of seeing the physical or visual comedy to it. And that's why in the recobbled cut, it's so impressive that, there's not a lot of voice acting, but it works like that because there's so much of the film that is just like visual comedy. Yeah. It's physical comedy gags.
It's visual storytelling, basically.
It's Looney Tunes. It's silent films. It really works that way. Just something that I was so happy to see that even in its incomplete state, this recobbled cut as the true vision for Richard Williams, or as close as we could get to it.
And noticeably longer than all the other ones.
Yes.
So, for instance, it was, what do I have here? The very first one that came out, technically, it got released somewhere in 92. That's 91 minutes. Then The Princess and the Cobbler was 80 minutes. After Miramax took it, which is classic Weinstein. The Weinsteins, they just cut things.
Absolutely.
Cut it down to 72 minutes. And then the recobbled cut is 100 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's longer than any other version by far.
Yeah. Because it doesn't let any storyboarding go to waste.
Right.
It's all the storyboardings, which realistically, if the film got made successfully, some of that might have been cut legitimately. So
just for visual fluidity.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because that's a whole different animation thing. Or it's much rougher,
right?
Yeah,
well, it's just a lot of times it's just static images. It's the storyboards.
And it works. It works in this cut.
Absolutely. Wow. Because everything else is so fantastic. So fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah. Folks, if you want proof of this, boot up the Recobbled cut on YouTube, once again, completely free, and go to about 18 minutes on the dot. And the next minute or so, just 1 minute or so, will give you an idea of how insane the drawings can get. Like I said before, beyond a visual feast. This is like a kaleidoscope of animation and techniques and motion that, like, clearly being done at the hands of one of, like, the masters of hand-drawn animation.
Wild.
I feel like it's a rabbit hole to go down of, like, shoulda, coulda, wouldas. What would have, been if this came out, before Aladdin? What would this been if it came out as intended for Richard Williams? But I'm telling you, it is something else. It is really great. But okay, let's talk about how to decide which version to actually watch. I want this to have, like, kind of some function to it because, again, I needed to know myself. Largely, I think Arabian Night muddies the kind of quiet beauty found in the original, almost too nervous to let the animation speak for itself, without narration cracking jokes or giving exposition. They give a voiceover to the thief that never really moves his mouth, but is like his internal monologue, and he's like constantly cracking jokes. It's not bad. It's just there's something lost there. However, it is the version you have to watch if you have actually kids with you. Because it is basically just a knockoff Aladdin with really good animation. It's got the songs. It's a complete project, and really isn't bad by anything, by all extents. Unfinished and all, I thought the Recobble cut was excellent. I'm going to say if you enjoy projects we covered like The Animatrix or Phil Tippett's Mad God for how they actually push boundaries of what the animated medium can do, you got to give this one a watch right away. And again, it's free on YouTube. Between the two of them, I don't think you can go wrong. And what counts is both having Richard Williams' fluid animation, which is a sight to behold. With that said, we're going to go ahead and give The Thief and the Cobbler, Recobbled cut, a 77, and Arabian Night, 1995, a 70 on the dot.
Wow. It's crazy. Crazy, because, we were growing up right around this time. This was slightly before us, but, we know Aladdin really well. We know all these films coming out, and I really think this one gets buried.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right?
This was panned for, on that 93 release and on the 95 release as just being an Aladdin wannabe. I could even imagine it being like a direct-to-video type of, interaction.
But if the animation is that different and that crazy, you would think that it would have just maybe held on a little bit longer. It's wild because these are very good scores. You clearly, really enjoyed yourself.
Yeah.
And, man, I don't know if a lot of people even know about it.
Yeah, and exactly why I thought it was a watershed moment for, to cover on the podcast, because I was curious, like a novice, like a rookie, going into this and saying, like, what is all this?
I know, even researching online, how do you piece it together?
Recobbled cut, why was it made over 30, 40 years? Miramax, WB, like all this stuff. And it's like, how do you navigate that? That's where I wanted to kind of had some function here, and also highlight that this is Richard Williams' last and only, like, masterwork. He's always tied to something. It's never just him, and the passion is needed in the animation.
And you had mentioned it. It was in my head the entire time. Phil Tippett in Mad God. That crazy cult film.
Yeah.
Barely released to theaters, but an absolute passion project. That took decades, correct?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Close to 2 decades?
Yeah.
If not 3 decades.
And like I said in the
And
review,
it's
like it was Phil Tippett's your weird uncle, and he goes down to the basement and he's making a movie.
That's exactly, and this is the animated version of that kind of it.
Yeah.
I love that this exists. It's pretty crazy that we get something good. When you have production problems like this, it's said that it had some of the, out of any movie, not just animated, just the worst production issues.
Yeah.
And the longest, one that kept along for decades and decades.
Yeah.
Good things usually don't come from that.
Absolutely.
And the fact that we do, I think that's great. And like you said, it's free on YouTube, the cut that you enjoy more. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I feel like it's also, like I said, with it being top of mind with Mad Max Fury Road and just being a labor of love.
Yeah.
I also think it's, it's not too long from when we got the Snyder cut for Justice League, and how it's clear when studio meddling is coming into play, we get these re-edits, and they drastically change the vision of the film.
Yeah.
That's the story here as well. And if anything, I liked kind of covering this just to hold the torch for a version of the film that is out and is probably the closest we're going to get as far as that original vision, that breathtaking vision.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I love it. And it exists, and it's easy to get, which is fantastic. All right. So that's The Thief and the Cobbler with a 77%, but that is the re-cobbled edit. And then the Arabian Night 1995 version at a 70%. Still a good score. 70%. Still a good score.
That's what I was like. I mean, is it a copycat at that point of Aladdin? Yeah, absolutely. But I feel like it has enough to
it's
hold
enough
it
there.
Off. Yeah.
Excellent. Very cool. All right. We're going to take a big jump to 2015. And this we're getting into much more pop culture. I don't want to say relevant.
But I'll say relevant.
This is Inside Out, and a lot of people look at this film in 2015 as the last one in the golden age of Pixar era. You know, Pixar era went 20 years from 94 or 94 Toy Story to kind of 2015 Inside Out. Things take a noticeable drop here. You know, John Lasseter I think hangs on for 3 more years, and I think he gets shook hand in 2018. Yeah, when was the Me Too stuff happening? 2018?
I think so. Well, and that really is what kind of led to his
that
downfall.
Was it. That was a downfall.
Absolutely.
But I think with him, a lot of the air changed at Pixar.
Well,
I
think
and we saw, and we
the barrel was scraped, and we get sequels and sequels and sequels,
and shit concepts. Even from the get go, there was something lost there. Magic was lost. It's almost like when Steve Jobs leaves. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't know if all of that is on Lasseter's shoulder, but there was something that happened in Disney, even if it's just a more corporatizing of Pixar.
Yes,
that people say that it really took off after Inside Out.
Yeah.
So,
for my money, I think it's all related to the production slate. This is after 2015, we see the first year that they experiment with a dual release, doing more than one film per year.
Yeah,
it's just when you're going to force animators to work, creative ideas are going to be pumped out. They're not going to be nurtured and inspired, and that's what you want.
So the corporate, so your argument is the corporatization. Of Pixar.
Absolutely.
That took it from a fun animation house.
Right.
Filled with magic and wonder.
Took it from
and
the best animation.
Right.
I mean.
Okay, let's get into it because this is very highly rated everywhere online.
Yeah.
And we can kind of bring it back down to light. How did we like it? How did we like it 10 years later, basically?
Sure.
Inside Out, directed by, the main director is Pete Docter, and then co-directed by Ronnie Del Carmen.
Yes, and that's where I want to start, too.
Okay.
Whenever we start talking about animation, it's always in the context of the animation space and the context of the creators of how they are nurtured in the studio system to rise up and bring them up into the business. While that might be the case for co-director, animator Ronnie Del Carmen here, the senior director on this project is no joke, and possibly could have been a 5 slot for this episode on its own.
This guy.
Oh, yeah. Pete Docter is a director, writer, and senior creative lead over at Pixar, and his track record is pretty damn hard to beat. I mean, this is a hell of a track record. He's got Monsters, Inc. in 2001, Up in 2009, the first Inside Out in 2015, and then Soul in 2020. And actually, Soul is the only one that's actually rated on the site with a solid 75. That is one hell of a track record.
That is. I mean, that's a guy you need to keep in your pocket.
Yeah,
keep that man creating.
Yeah. And also, I mean...
I was surprised to not see him on Inside Out, too.
Exactly. You read my mind because I did this research and I was like, oh, I can't wait to see what he's going to do with like a first time on a sequel, and of course he's not part of the project. So I think he's obviously behind the scenes, especially with that senior creative lead. All these creators at Pixar have their hands in the project. But yeah, a little bit of disappointment. Yeah. But this guy's a killer. Pete Docter, really great. Inside Out tells 2 stories. One, a coming-of-age story about a little girl named Riley, mixed with a adventure movie, Inside Her Head. The emotions in our head run a tight operation, controlling our core memories that shape who we are. Every moment of our lives they observe in like a peanut gallery style, commenting on it, and seeing where our path in life takes us. Feelings are given an anthropomorphic spin and made into adorable individual animated characters. This includes joy, fear, anger, sadness, and disgust. which will grow with 4 more for the second one. And we focus on the emotions of this 11-year-old girl named Riley, going through a tough transition in her life, moving to a new city. All this change in her life clouds what her true core memories are, and her inner joy goes on a journey to strive for Riley's happiness. Story-wise here, I really loved everything that goes on in Riley's real life. I feel like it just strikes the classic kids movie plot structure of fear of change. And I feel like that's also, we kind of talk about it in these Pixar Disney pieces of like the purpose, the actual meaning of the film. And I feel like this is a good one to tackle. The inside plot, on the other hand, is where I just feel like it drags a bit. There is a plot structure of joy going from interest islands one by one. There are 5 that are set up, and very predictably, very stalely, it just plays out one by one as she's kind of going along. It just it's stale after the first couple, and I don't know. I just felt like it was didn't really do a lot with the adventure structure of the story, and unfortunately, it's completely wholesale repeated in the second Inside Out as well. I mean, if there's a short review for the Inside Out 2 review, is that it's just Inside Out 1 again. You did watch this, though. What do you think of the pacing? I mean, I guess that really boils down to pacing. That I
watch this one, and as far as I would comment on the outside world, when we're dealing with the human beings, it's such a minute factor.
Oh, really?
That it's hard to. Well, I mean, just look at the screen time. Okay. I mean, how much do we really spend with the real people?
Yeah, I guess it's more than minor. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I didn't mind it. It's not like I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I just figured we just needed these scenes to kind of break it up a little bit, and because they were just catalyst. We needed something to happen in real world to catalyst
to be the catalyst.
To be the catalyst to actually make something happen inside the head and everything.
Sure,
like
they got
that.
to comment on something.
I said overall pacing. I didn't hate it. I just thought that overall for a 2015 Pixar film. To be a very simple story and structure.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I don't know. I was expecting maybe a little bit more.
And certainly the hype around it.
Yeah, and the hype around it. And it's 2015 Pixar. I just feel like we get bigger stories and maybe better stories even earlier on. And I think a lot has to do with that visually as well, because I thought that it looked... I thought the design lacked in general for the film.
Really?
Yeah, I thought in texture, in detail, and I thought overall set pieces were kind of much more simple than I thought. I wasn't wowed at any point, and that surprised me. So the pacing was okay, but it's the fact that I found it all a little bit lacking. That I wasn't excited about this film. It was keeping my attention, and I was interested in it, and it was like good enough and humorous enough, and you know what I mean. Where I was watching. I wasn't like messing around, which happens a lot for animated films with me lately. But that's kind of my overarching theme behind it. So I was having issues. I don't know if you were having issues with pacing. I was having issues with simplicity, maybe.
Really? Well, that's actually one of my big highlights for this film. I think there's a simple brilliance. I agree with you, definitely simple, but I feel like Pixar really outdid themselves as far as like character designs just being so well communicated on screen, which I'll talk about in a little bit. I do want to actually go on that it was a pretty funny script. I thought I was actually I did not expect to laugh this much at this movie being,
and it was, and that's what, and then did have me. Like the characters were good, especially inside. I mean, there was something there that made this film a little electric, and it was all the characters kind of just dealing with each other, being complete opposites, or being so true to just their one thing they're supposed to be, whatever emotion they're tagged with.
Sure.
The fact that they're just like, let's just do that to the nines.
Is
great.
Yeah,
and really good. Everything else around it, though, that's where I thought was kind of lacking.
Sure. But I really was surprised with just how much I laughed at this. It's really like, it's so clever. I feel like it just kind of charms you to death. Much like Monsters, Inc. or Osmosis Jones, there is a gold mine of jokes that can be made about framing everything in like corporate operations terms around our body, or at least in our head. Long-term memory being this tube mail system, the train of thought being two of my favorites. And a lot of these jokes do just boil down to puns, which I don't know, maybe if you're annoyed by puns, that this is not going to be your bag. But I think the writing team had a lot of fun with this, cooking all these different ideas up, and that really does extend to the second one. There's enough real estate there that they can just kind of
especially with adding a whole other batch of characters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Voice acting wise, there are a lot of highlights. I think this is probably Lewis Black's best role as Anger. I don't know. I mean, it's talking about perfect for the guy. I was also looking back. I was like, what was he in? Apparently, he was in Jacob's Ladder, the horror movie we covered
watched
last
that.
year.
Yeah.
He's like the doctor in that. I was like, what? I don't remember that. Although I was annoyed by the character Sadness, Phyllis Smith from The Office, she's flawless casting decision here. I mean,
I love that she got this big role, too.
Yeah.
Just Phyllis from The Office just lands this massive Pixar role.
Yep.
It's awesome.
It really is.
Love to see her back as well.
Yeah.
In 2, because we don't see some returning faces.
Yes. Which I'll touch on in the review of 2, because there is, I don't know if I'll even call it like casting drama or casting news, but it's something the internet is up and
They're
up
talking
in
about
arms
it a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What else is new? The internet picks a fight.
Back to Phyllis, though, how you said just spot on casting.
Yeah.
It really is spot on casting.
And same with like Lewis Black. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
these are Sadness and Anger. Like it's great.
Yeah, Phyllis really leans into it. I mean, just the whininess and the mopiness. It's like perfect.
It's great. And I think that's where I want to kind of bridge into some of this like character design praise I have. I think as far as character design goes, the emotions I think are up there, as though on the surface they look simple and you're like, oh, I don't know, I don't really like, love any of their designs, but I feel like they are up there in purpose with some of the greats, certainly in Pixar's and Disney's catalog. Each one of them has a clear color identity matched with their feelings, and that inspires everything from their voice, their clothes, their action, their comedy, their movement. The list goes on. I feel like that is some like really lasered in character design for this.
Yes. Character design I like, by the way. This I didn't have an issue with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just like the look of them, or?
Overall, it was texture and detail overall of the film, and then
okay.
it was set pieces.
Oh, okay.
And where we're traveling, those set pieces. The main office, that set piece, I thought was lacking in detail.
Okay.
I wasn't expecting. I guess I went into it just expecting more.
Sure.
Because sometimes there's such a fluidity to Pixar. There's something about it. And it's not like you're saying, wow, this looks so real. And sometimes you are, like Toy Story 4 or something like that. But sometimes it's just, I don't know, there's a feeling of that you just know it when you're in that Pixar home. And I feel like we get even more in Up. We sometimes even get... It didn't feel 2015 to me.
Interesting.
It felt kind of early 2000s.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I as far as going back to like the characters themselves, I just think it is just classic Pixar brilliance. A simple concept communicated as clear and as polished as possible. And something we sadly see go out the door for the sequel. I feel like this element of my praise for this first one is not entirely lost, but like really lost in the sequel. A great comparison or example is putting these designs next to something like Orion in the Dark, which we covered, and by no means a bad film, but you see that we are dealing with some pros on the Pixar side. The communication of what these characters are, what jokes they tell, how they move, how they look, how they sound. It's just like what they sound like before they even do anything on screen, and I feel like that goes to show that there is some real inspired work going on here. They are goddamn machines over at Pixar. Kind of on your opening notes, Tom. When you look at Pixar's films after this release, there's a pretty glaringly obvious dip in quality, both in novel ideas, but also successful projects, like financially successful projects. 2015 marks the first year they experiment with a double release alongside Disney, and save for a few exceptions like Cars and Toy Stories, we see the studio rely heavily on sequels rather than new ventures in a very uncharacteristic way for the studio. But all of this points to why, quote unquote, the golden age of Pixar films are so good, because they are jam-packed with quality, have a core that starts with one inspired idea, giving it the time it needs rather than juggling many ideas all at once. With that said, we're going to go ahead and give Inside Out a 79.
Wow. Oh, my God.
I thought this was an excellent film.
Oh, my God.
I
Vin.
thought this was an excellent film. I really considered 80 on this. I considered 81.
You were that hot on it. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to be the Debbie Downer.
No.
Wow. So this was hitting a lot for you.
Yeah.
A lot.
I
Wow.
think
Wow.
it boils down to I did not expect to actually laugh this much. I thought the real world was balanced nice. Really what I think keeps it out of the 80 for me is that this adventure plot is just like, let's go to one island, let's go to the next, let's go to the next. And it's like that. It's never shaken up in the story structure.
That's true.
Of the film.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Okay, but 79%. I mean, I love this. I like that we're getting some good animated things because the
I know, it's a
animations.
great week.
For some reason, I thought it's an uphill battle with some of the kids' animation for you. I think it's the opposite. I think that's how it is on this side of the table. Yeah. My last note is I don't think it's the greatest Pixar movie or one of the best movies of all time because I've heard that comment.
Oh yeah,
Some
it's got
people
like
flat out love
94 on Metacritic.
but I said, it held my interest and it mildly entertained me, and that's not the easiest thing to do for me anymore when it comes to animated kids films. I'm finding.
I love that.
So no shoes rating, but
no shoes.
I for instance, Orion in the Dark.
Yeah.
I lasted about a half an hour, and immediately I'm going to my phone or I'm looking up
Sure, it
the
didn't grab
news
you.
while watching it because
Yeah.
I didn't grab me.
So the fact that this did is saying something.
Yes.
I love that. I think that's a good piece. And if anything, to your comment, like I think it isn't an uphill battle because I appreciate animation. I love
Yes, you do. Yes,
animation
absolutely.
and movement on screen, and the fact that films are a visual medium first. So that's why animation is, I feel like, also important to study. And there's some really good stuff here. Most of all, just simple, clear designs that are just like executed flawlessly. I just feel like the 5 emotions here to the problem of any sequels with this IP is that it just, I don't know. I feel like there's something magical that happened in them having restraint of only 5 emotions.
Yeah, and I kind of, as soon as this was coming out or got announced, years ago, I immediately basically thought that it was an issue to make a second one out of this film. But we will get into that in just a little bit, Inside Out 2. But before then, we have a donation coming in. So we're going to go ahead and go into our donation segment because we got Matt D coming in. He sent a Space Odyssey donation in, so 2001 pennies he sent our way.
Matt D, also write in if you like us saying Matt D.
He's coming. I'll tell you what. We did have a new producer this year, but these guys coming back for this year,
Yes.
really helping us out.
Much appreciated.
As we're in a bit of a dry spell, and people
Absolutely.
are still kind of getting used to the whole value for value thing. Anyway, so Matt D wrote in Space Odyssey, and he goes, "Hey guys, I love the Mad Max coverage. It's a rare decade-spanning franchise, maybe the only one that is completely driven by a single artist's vision. And it's gotten stronger over time.
So true.
Fury Road is straight up an all-timer, and while I wish Furiosa had more practical effects, it was a new and welcome spin on the franchise. Each film is an experience, which is what theater is all about. That being said, I do have some criticism." It's those parentheses, shocker.
Shocker.
Vin said Toe Cutter was a bad villain name, and having Bruce Spence play 2 different characters in 2 different movies in the same universe was confusing. I say these are 2 bedrock elements of the Mad Max film.
Oh.
We all know Hugh K's Barn.
Okay.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We all know that Hugh K's Byrne played Toe Cutter and Immortal Joe.
Yep.
And the film seems to do their best to have zero continuity or timeline. It's not even clear that Max is real or the same Max in every movie. You see Mad Max in Furiosa for a second, but he's like 35 in Fury Road.
Yep.
Furiosa takes place decades earlier. So is he 15 in that shit? He's 22 in the original movie, which is like 100 years or more earlier than Furiosa. Rictus Erectus ages and gets fatter between Fury Road and Furiosa, even though he's supposed to be decades younger. Speaking of Rictus Erectus, what a dumb name.
You're defending Toe Cutter.
Yeah. His brother is Scrotus. The guitar name is the guitar guy is Doof Warrior.
No way, Doof
Warrior.
Oh my god.
There's Smeg, the Octoboss, the Humongous, Dr. Dealgood, Screw Loose, and on and on.
Ooh, I like Screw Loose. That's a good lackey name.
Matt D writes, P.S. 84 is way too low for Fury Road.
Sure, I understand.
And then, Matt D wrote this in and then immediately listened to our last episode. And then because Isaac wrote in and wrote about the Mad Max episode as well.
Yes.
So Matt D wanted to rep it for Furiosa a little bit more. So
okay.
He wrote in, he goes, P.P.S. After Isaac's note, I have to defend Furiosa. I think Tom nailed the effect Fury Road's existence had on people's view of Furiosa. They expected another Fury Road and were disappointed when they didn't get it. I'm glad Miller told a totally different story in a totally different style. Too many franchises are full of the same story told over and over and over again, simply with unimportant plot and setting and character differences plugged in like an ad-lib. I want fresh stories within the world that was created, and Miller gets this. I hope he makes more. My guess is that Furiosa will get better with a second view, and I would score Fury Road 90 plus, and I'd scored Furiosa 80 plus.
Wow.
So Matty is hot on this franchise.
I could see an argument for Fury Road being 90 plus. Like I said, on that recent rewatch, there was some aspects there that I felt were a little dated.
It was dating itself,
yeah. But between Isaac saying I was too generous on Furiosa, Matt, you're saying too pessimistic, critical on Furiosa. I think I'm just right. I'm Goldilocks zone.
See,
here.
this is why I love the podcast. This is why I love the show, or just like critics. I hear this all the time with booze and snobby whiskey guys or snobby this. It's like that. Just drink whatever you want, and with movies, watch whatever you want. It's your own personal thing.
Absolutely.
But I will say there are tethers here. Like I love that now. Me, you, Isaac, Matt, we all love Fury Road.
Yeah.
The question is just how much do we love it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
We all love that. And then Furiosa, I think Isaac and I were kind of the same deal. Good. We liked it. Don't necessarily have to see it again. Had some issues with it. And then, you're sitting in that happy medium kind of.
I think it's the Goldilocks zone because I don't want to, though the impact of Fury Road, the gravity of it is all-consuming. Like that's the style of the new Mad Max world, the new era, as you referred to on the episode. That doesn't cut from the wonderful world building and design work still in Furiosa. I would say. That's still just as good, and really more so. It's when it comes down to it, it's like pacing with Furiosa, where I definitely agreed with
length.
you, and that is just like it's kind of a once and done. It's not really bad for any reason.
Well, that's what Isaac said too.
Yeah,
he was like, I don't need to see it again ever.
Right.
And he agreed it was way too long. I wonder what Matt thought about that. Well, I guess if he's saying 80 plus, I mean, for Furiosa, it's very good. He really enjoyed it.
But I think you can't. At least my personal opinion for this Mad Max saga is that you cannot cut the brilliant design work in the world building just because it was done beforehand. It's still George Miller. It's still that quality, and it's still that world. So,
did you happen to see? I agree completely, and I love that Max is getting this much talk.
Yeah.
I like that. Like, it's such a great franchise.
Yeah,
and
it was a
weird
great episode.
franchise.
Yeah.
And Matt points it out well, where it's like each film is its own thing, and I do like the rebranding.
Sure.
I mean, at the end, he said, I hope he does more. He has already been working on another film.
Yep.
The biggest, and I think it would have been greenlit like immediately. Furiosa did so kind of poor at the box office. I don't know if that's going to come as easy now.
Yeah, I think I actually saw something today that Tom Hardy was commenting on. Wasteland, I believe, is the next, or the project idea.
Yeah.
That it may not happen, or it may not happen with him.
That would just be tragic.
Yeah, it's
that
true.
would be tragic.
That's true.
It's George Miller's baby. You got to let him do it.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not going to be around much longer. Just let him do it.
But it is. I mean, it is technically in production because it's being written and you know what I mean, worked on and storyboarded. So we'll just kind of see what happens. It is a shame that if Furiosa just did a little bit better, it probably would have been greenlit and like fast tracked as well.
I think all four of us in this grudge match or over around Mad Max can agree that Furiosa deserved to do better in the box office.
Absolutely. It really did.
Yeah, this is such a unique, such a creator-driven film.
Yeah.
That the fact that like Bad Boys did better than it. I mean,
and a visual feast in some ways as well.
Yeah.
Did you happen to see? We got a comment on Podbean. Somebody using the Podbean app. Did you happen to see that?
No, I don't think so.
It trashed it. He was like, Furiosa's garbage.
Oh, around Mad
Furiosa's
Max again?
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do more Mad Max.
But it was Furiosa's trash. He was like, the first one's obviously the best. Like, a guy was so snarky about it.
Interesting. That's
he should donate. He should donate in and actually become a producer.
That's on the verge of a contrarian opinion. The first one's the best?
Not on the verge, completely. He said Fury Road was trash.
Fury Road?
Yes. Was I saying Furiosa?
You said Furiosa.
I'm sorry, no.
Close, yeah.
Fury Road.
Whoa.
He said it was like overhyped garbage.
Okay, so man, I don't know. I actually would really, genuinely would love to hear that explanation because
those Podbean users, this guy and you are all of them.
I like the download options.
Matt, great note. Thank you for producing once again, man. You are executive producer of episode 139. If you're new to the show, just been around a little bit longer. This is the producer segment of the show. So what's going on here is that Matt found value and is finding value in the daily ratings, what we're doing here, the website and the podcast. So he financially donated to the show. And when you financially support the daily ratings, you are a legit actual producer. Because just like in Hollywood, when you financially support a project, you are a producer of that thing. It's called the value for value model, and that's kind of what I said. So are you finding value in any of the things that we're doing here? Vin and I are not going to hit you with advertising. We're not going to hit you with ads online. There's not going to be tier structures. There's not going to be paywalls. It's not going to have to be you have to pay a certain amount of money to get more content, like a pay-to-play thing. The point is we put 100% of everything that we make just out there for free, technically. But if you're using it, if you're using the website, listening to the podcast, that's value in your pocket. So we ask, can you give us value back in our pocket? It's the value for value model. You go to thedailyratings.com, you go to the donations tab, and then right there, all the options are there, whether it's credit card or PayPal, debit, Satoshis or Venmo. All the information is there, along with some fun set donations like Matt D donated a Space Odyssey donation. That's a fun set one that we have. But it's whatever amount that you want because everybody's finances are different. Everybody's weekly finances are different. So this week, hey, are you finding value? And what value is that to you? It's at dailyratings.com. Head to the donations tab. All right, Matt D, once again, thank you. Executive producer 139, as always, man. Great note.
Yes.
Love it, as always. Thank you so
We'll
much.
have the grudge match between you and Isaac coming on the next Mad Max episode.
All right, so let's get into it. I mean, we brought it up last week with Bad Boys, and is the box office dead? And
right, it only takes until,
right, you're like, just wait a week.
Yeah, wait a week and see where the dust falls.
And so this shattered expectations.
Sure.
And not only that, I mean, this made $155 million opening weekend. In the matter of 6 days, when this podcast comes out, it's going to be over like $200 million. Wow. Domestic.
Yeah,
it's almost it's over 350 worldwide.
Wow.
That's crazy. On top of that, Bad Boys still did $33 million.
Still bringing them in,
which is
right.
What Furiosa was, by the way, for its opening week. So summer is here, absolutely, and people are, I don't know, I feel like clamoring for a decent Pixar film again.
Sure.
Because there's been such a bad stretch.
Sure.
And people love the first one. Vin, I mean, you loved it as well, giving it a 79%. So let's get into Inside Out 2. What's the same? What's different? And how'd you like it?
Well, I definitely did like this. The quick and dirty on this review is that both of these films are not too different in score in the sense that I really do think that they check the same boxes. This is a sequel as true as a sequel can be. Iterating on a lot of what was done in the first, expanding, growing, and trying to use, an inspired story to tell it. Inspired story within what was going on in the first film. This is the directorial debut for Kelsey Mann, a storyboard artist and screenwriter. Well, he has been on Pixar's senior creative team for some of the stumbles we've seen in the last few years. My interest in his career goes back to him working with actually Cartoon Network on some fun cult classic shows, such as like Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and Mega's XLR, like just some cool cartoon projects that he was a part of. So that was some excitement, not near the excitement of Pete Docter. Pete Docter is like, I want to see the next Pete Docter film,
right.
But it's still pretty interesting.
Quick question on the whole director stuff.
Yeah.
Were you surprised? Did you follow the career at all of the co-director in Inside Out, which was Ronnie Del Carmen?
Yes.
Was there passing of the baton at some point? Mm-hmm. Should he have gotten this? What's your thought on that?
I guess that's a good point. I didn't even consider that he might have been like stumped for this project. In Inside Out 1, it's definitely what we always comment on, especially in Pixar studio space, of like we have the veteran and he's bringing up someone else.
Right, so I'd expect you. Did he go on to direct his own?
I forget exactly what he did after Inside Out, but yeah. Solo gig here for Kelsey Mann, which is definitely a little bit of a turnaround in what their method and what their studio structure is like. And this is also the return of a major IP for Pixar after 3 solid years of hit or miss projects. As much as I poke fun at both Disney and Pixar scraping the barrel on old franchises, the last couple years has had some experimentation on Pixar's side. The 2 sides of this are probably turning red at the usual level of Pixar quality, and the way at the bottom is Lightyear, failing on almost every level possible. Yeah.
And that's not original stuff either. That's going after, that's branching off of old IP.
Exactly, yeah.
Lightyear.
Though it is not Toy Story, whatever, but yeah, absolutely.
Right.
It is just still scraping the barrel. This film is somewhere in the middle. I would say out of the gate that the quality of the first is still here, so much so that I don't really see these movies, once again, too different in score, but there's definitely an air about this that made me wish they left it alone, like some of the other Pixar greats. I really wish that Inside Out was kind of special enough that I kind of wish they left it alone, but, as is the ongoing theme with the podcast, I would not be making money in Hollywood if I made the decisions. This is really doing well. For Inside Out 2, it is really more of the same. 2 parallel stories play out, one in real life, the other being, once again, a adventure journey through the mind. Our same crew of feelings are given a rude awakening to Riley entering puberty, just after we settled into her new life. This introduces a whole new set of 4 emotions and a hostile takeover of her actions, kicking out the old emotions out for more complex and mature ones. This includes anxiety, envy, embarrassment, and ennui, or boredom. I'll get back to ennui in a minute. Anxiety is the clear-cut villain, though. I feel like also where this is a little bit simpler is that there is just so much more of a clear-cut villain. There is a hostile takeover of Riley's emotions, so they like kick everyone out. It's like it's kind of good guys versus bad guys here. And it's anxiety is paving the way for good intentions for Riley's developing years, but creating a drastically different headspace. When her sense of self is threatened by these new beliefs and new emotions, we see Joy and the gang go on a journey once again to find Riley's true self. I'd say odd to say, but this has a serious case of sequelitis, despite Riley becoming a teenager being natural real estate for the story to tell. It's the, I don't know if it was the post-credit or just like the very end piece of Inside Out 1. Do you remember? I forget what it was. Either way, they hint at this like puberty joke in Inside Out 1. So it's definitely like a sequel feels like it would be in the works, but I felt this would really have a lot to work with, changing how our primary 5 emotions interact, but instead they just kind of all take a backseat together, with Joy leading the adventure plot again.
Because, you're expanding the character count, too.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So you kind of a little bit...
Even more, the side, like anger, fear and whatnot, they take even more of a backseat than they did before, and they were already taking a backseat. And I just feel like an opportunity in this sequel would be to maybe work with these wonderful character designs you have.
Yeah.
And develop those rather than introduce more. But I guess that, for the birds.
And this is what I mentioned. I made that comment of, when this was announced and has been worked on for years, I feel like this project in particular is difficult to do a second round of.
Oh, okay.
And the reason why is when you look at a Toy Story, what works is the characters. But the best part is you can go anywhere with those characters and you can make anything happen. With this, we are stuck in the mind of a child. And, okay, so we're not dealing with child, we're now dealing with teen.
Yep.
But the only way to go is to add characters and you can't have them go on an unbelievably crazy adventure.
Sure.
It kind of still has to be in the realm of we need to stay in the head.
Yeah.
Kind of. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so now you need to add characters. So now your character count is up. And how do you not get rinse and repeat?
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous thing to do. With Cars, it's all about the adventure of the characters we came to love.
Sure.
Toy Story, same deal. The characters that we love. Not that you can't add, Toy Story adds 1 or 2 or something like that per this one. This is, we need a new batch of characters. It works so well in the first one. And what you're saying is it's great because we're building upon that, but it's hindering itself because now what we like there's a shadow over it now.
Right.
And I just think it's naturally, you either have to go batshit crazy and really do a completely different film and just call it Inside Out 2.
Sure.
Or it's what we have here.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's still a lot of quality to it.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
There's still. This is obviously they understand like this is like a big IP for them. There's still passion behind it, but a good example is like all of my praise for the simple brilliance of like the emotion design goes out the window here. The very worst being ennui, completely losing the simple brilliance I praised. I mean, if every kid and parent alike is going to have to Google what your emotion means after watching the film, I think you lose the quality in the design process. I think that is so clear cut.
It's weak. That's weak.
Yeah. Ennui is boredom. It's like, French philosophy stuff. But like, it's just, man, I also think just like the same story structure of an adventure through Riley's mind was totally unneeded to repeat, considering, at least for me, maybe I'm just tuned into it, that it was stale in the first place of like, this island is interest, and we go to the next, and we go to the next, literally 1 through 5. It is kind of the same.
You're pigeonholed. You're pigeonholed.
It's kind of the same adventure, and it's just like, I don't know, maybe it doesn't make sense having the emotions go out of the brain, but like have it be, I don't know, tied more into like puberty jokes or something like that around the body or something like that. I just found it surprising that we just got in the same adventure.
You know what I thought was electric in the first one, actually, and probably what I was enjoying the most, is when we went into the parents' heads as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had
some of my favorite jokes.
We had all the same emotions, but aged and in different characters. And that could have been more electric.
Yes.
Or it could have been now if you have a teen and in high school, you could be dealing with so much other. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That would have been fun.
Absolutely.
But it pigeonholes itself big time.
Yeah, at being so clear-cut of a sequel.
Right.
I think one area where this film actually kind of exceeds the original a little bit is in some fun experimentation with different animation styles. Characters in Riley's mind will be in the style she remembers them. For instance, there is a like Dora the Explorer character that is animated entirely as a 2D cartoon. And a video game character Riley has a crush on is animated with these like low-res like PS1 graphics. Little things like that is why I wanted to theme the week around animation specifically.
Yeah.
And interesting animation projects. In the first one, you have Abstract Thought. That whole sequence I loved. And just a cool switch up in like what is actually going on visually in this story.
So, and this is where, I found things lackluster in 2015.
Sure.
I got across and everything like that. I would have enjoyed, and maybe it seems like they stepped up their game a decent amount, or they did something different at least with some animation. But we were in a post Spideyverse world.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, get on it. I was listening to a clip in Quentin Tarantino just this morning, and he just has a beautiful take and review of There Will Be Blood, and he's going and he finished it off with saying, "I am so happy to be making films at the same time as Paul Thomas Anderson."
Oh yeah.
Because when I watched There Will Be Blood, I knew I had to step up my game and do everything I could for Inglourious Basterds.
Sure. Sure.
And it's like,
Spideyverse had that effect.
Yes, it did.
Absolutely.
But
and
I don't think I doubt enough. I doubt it did it enough in this.
No.
You weren't wowed.
No,
I was not. Started with that.
I was not wowed like either of the Spider-Verses.
Right.
And I think it's a great observation, Tom, because we see DreamWorks as a studio responding to what Sony Animations have done and incorporating a mix of drawn and CGI animation.
Yeah, Puss in Boots.
Yep. Bad Guys as well.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, definitely a mix of these, like, they rose to the challenge, which is what you're getting at.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And with Pixar, it's just, I just feel like, and I didn't see the film,
sure,
but I just know that you would have really been laying into animation had it been that different.
Yeah.
And I bet this is a step up from Wish. From last year.
Yes.
But that's not saying much.
Yes. That isn't saying much. It's a step up from Lightyear and things like that, yeah.
But what an opportunity.
Yeah.
Especially with the treasure trove of new characters. Do crazy animation stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to
That's also where I think, like, again, it's just like it's the confines of having this adventure plot play out so similar to the first.
Yeah.
I would have liked maybe if it was an adventure. Maybe it's about the conflict between these new emotions and the old emotions a little bit more directly than putting them in their own separate camps.
That would be funny.
And letting them
They go to war.
Yeah,
and so we go to the external, the real world.
Right.
She's just freaking out.
Yeah, you can obviously have, like, office jokes, like they're, I don't know. Obviously, this is besides the point.
For the birds.
What the film is. Yeah, exactly. For the birds. It's not what the film is. But I feel like, actually, on that note of, like, the corporate jokes, the operations jokes, you can kind of feel these are getting thinner as they go on. It's not quite done yet, but I don't know what an Inside Out 3 would really pull from. I think this is where the writing team shines the brightest in both movies. There are still a lot of gems in the pun category, a sarcasm. Discuss has hyper-fixation that plays out like a Bourne Identity, like, investigation scene, a literal brainstorm. These things, I feel like they are just a hair more than a chuckle out of me. Like, a pun would get a chuckle out of me. Right. These, I don't know, there's something a little bit more magic to them. Honestly, I expected way more puberty jokes, like I said, so I'm glad the script did its own thing, but once again, if an Inside Out 3 is in the cards, there's got to be a switch up in the setting or
get batshit
something.
Crazy.
Yeah, the kid episode. Really? Usually I'm the one that curses.
I want a Full Metal Jacket level.
That's awesome.
Of cerebral.
Right, yeah, that's puberty in a little girl's mind. It's like Platoon. It's the scene with Willem Dafoe. I think a solid example of a counter example of this is Monsters, Inc., where for the sequel, we don't get the same corporate jokes. The setting is switched up to a college that still gives us time to discover the world of monsters, but is totally new inspiration for how jokes are built for that reason.
I think that's great, yeah.
And I feel like within Pixar's own, studio, I feel like that is a real important point to make, that you can adapt aspects of your story without losing identity or anything like that. Voice acting wise, we have some positives, some steps backwards. Let me say I love Kyle MacLachlan, especially him having a bit of a resurgence with this Fallout show that he plays the Overseer in.
Right.
But being honest, he just sounds way too old to be playing the dad here.
Because he is way too old.
Yeah,
he played the dad in the first one, I think. Yeah.
Which both of them, Diane Lane, I think, is the mom. Both of them, I thought they were excellent.
Diane Lane, yeah.
Here,
who I like.
Yeah, just unfortunately, it was just a bit. It sounded like a total miss.
Yeah.
And again, we kind of touched on it, how important voice acting is to associating with these characters. There is also some slight casting news drama around fear and disgust. Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling were the voices in the first one, and definitely on the back of all my praise I gave to character designs and perfect matches. But after receiving a reportedly an insultingly low offer to return from Pixar, they were replaced. The new voices were done by Tony Hale of Arrested Development fame and Liza Lapria, who I didn't really recognize. Depending on where you go online, this is either going to be people up in arms or people not caring at all.
Yeah.
What is the internet experience that we all share, or at least Twitter? Honestly, that aside, my opinion genuinely is that these new voices just might be a little bit weaker. I was actually expecting a lot more from Tony Hale. I love his just like soft-spoken comedic routine.
I thought Tony Hale kind of would have slipped in there. It would have fit like a glove.
If anything, he looks like Fear.
Right,
more.
literally, yeah.
He looks like Buster. Both kind of came off as like a soft miss, so something to note. And again, not something I'm particularly mad about, but it depends where you go on the internet. So, but like I said towards the beginning, none of my criticism here knocks the film down below a tier of quality that the first film is on. This still has an inspired story to tell, still looks great animation-wise, and has a balance of fun and heavy plot beats that separate it from your average storyline in a kid's movie. That is the Pixar touch. Pixar's production slate for the next few years gives us an original project called Elio, followed by Toy Story 5. So hopefully sometime in between, these sequel projects can get some more time in the oven and maybe come out even better than the original. With that said, we're going to go ahead and give Inside Out 2 a 71.
71, a good score. I mean, you have a pretty good week here, Vin.
Yeah.
And 71 that is a good movie, and that is a good animated film.
Where Inside Out 1 could have maybe verged into 80s. Once again, though, I mean, I don't feel like this dips below 70 because there is a benchmark. There's a floor of quality it doesn't go below.
I wonder, I mean, almost back to what if Furiosa came first before Fury Road?
Sure.
What if Casino became before Goodfellas?
Oh, yeah.
Is it that syndrome that you just can't get away with? Because we have Inside Out 1, this only can be so good. When you're kind of doing kind of the same thing over,
Sure. I think for me it came more stale. And again, not knocking a film for what it's not or lost potential, but I feel like there are some misses here. Like I said, there's an air about this film that feels like a sequel that you get with Pixar sequels.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, and 71, still good. It's still worth going to the film if you have kids and everything like that.
Absolutely.
How was your theater watch, Phil?
Filled with kids. I mean,
and enjoying themselves.
Aligned with the box office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But reactions and good. Like this wasn't a Lightyear situation where we had silence.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I really dread the day I have to experience that again because it was like secondhand embarrassment almost.
Did you go alone to this one or no?
Yeah.
See, you should let me know on Monday. It's just
I
funny.
I gotta get the movies done.
I like how it's just like too. It's not even weird anymore. It's just like, listen, this is what we do.
Yeah. Well, now I wear the swag. I wear the Daily Ratings merch.
Oh, good.
If anyone approaches me and goes, I'm on the job.
Yeah. All right. So, one quick question to finish up here. What is our we haven't set up a podcast rule yet. Let's say like our boys and our girls out there, my boys and your girls, if they have offspring, do they automatically become our boys or girls?
Oh, so, like Maya Hawke.
Maya Hawke is in this playing Anxiety, who is our boy, Ethan Hawke's
your
daughter.
Boy.
No, that's not true. Yeah. Ethan Hawke is our boy. Even you have said in the past, Ethan Hawke is our boy.
Okay.
Because we're rooting for him.
Yep. And, of course, her mother is Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like Kill Bill?
So, is Maya Hawke now automatically our girl, or it's not genetic?
I will say, maybe I skipped over the voice acting too much with like the drama and whatnot. She does a great job as Anxiety.
She does.
Yeah, like it strikes a balance like with sadness in the first one where this character is pretty annoying,
right?
But
right.
At the same time is follow through, is execution in the right way.
Okay, all right. That doesn't answer the question, the broader question, but maybe we'll just have to see more from Maya.
I don't think Maya Hawke was my girl.
Okay,
she was all right in Stranger Things, which you didn't see.
Okay, all right. No, just season 1, my friend. I did manage to recently finish Ozark, by the way.
Oh, nice.
So that wasn't a one-seasoner. That was
quick thoughts. Tell me 2 shoes on the spot.
I mean, overall, I really like the series. Actually, I think I fell asleep on the very last episode, so I think I have like a half an hour to watch.
Classic
actually,
but classic tea right there.
I've always been a big fan of Ozark. Really liked it. Easy to binge. I think it drew. It's all good at season 4. I'm just not. I haven't been getting rewarded like I thought we were. Maybe.
Oh, okay. It's not bringing it home.
Yeah.
I hear that gets pretty crazy as well. I mean, not to dip into spoilers.
It's the whole show.
Oh,
the entire
really?
show are hooks, and this new character, this new bad guy, this new threat, and how do we take care of it?
Interesting.
It is very slow. Things happen too slow. So any little thing that happens, it's enough to keep you going. Overall, a great show. Felt the same way with, and I watched all of Succession as well.
Oh, yeah.
Season 4,
go back.
really like Season 4. It is a different show.
Interesting.
Than 1 through 3.
We talked about this off mic a little bit of how, like, outside looking in, it looks like more of a comedy than anything. But you said that was a little bit of a rug pull.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Kind of, and it's more so. There is a tonal shift, kind of. I wouldn't say it goes to comedy, but it becomes a different show. Still enjoyable, but I really view that show as almost season 1 through 3, and then there's also almost like an extended. Something fun for for the true fans.
Yeah,
and go ahead and watch 4. Okay, so
a little bit of TV talk for the algorithm. Yeah. Let's just throw out Boys season 4, House of the Dragon.
Only watched the first season of Boys. I really liked it, by the way. Yeah. I did. I really liked it. And my boy is in it.
Oh, yeah.
Carl Urban.
Yeah.
Any more thoughts or notes on these films, Vin? Or notes for upcoming episodes, roll credits?
Notes for next week.
Wild Hogs!
Well, yeah. We're adding Wild Hogs as the 6th slot now. Yeah, we're doing another theme week. Motorcycle. I don't know. I'm kind of feeling a little rejuvenated going back to these like theme episodes as far as like just covering a lot of variety of movies. Like why this week was so good is that it was like a little bit of this decade, a little bit of that. So many different art styles, so many different purposes.
Definitely went all over the place.
So
no one's gonna say you were too consistent on this.
But for next week, of course, having it all around like motorcycle themed stuff, we got some classics there. So excited to watch them all.
Excellent, man. Well, thank you so much for watching these films. Thanks for stopping by here tonight. We're excited for next week, and we'll run these films down one more time. We have Fantastic Planet with a 64%, The Last Unicorn with a 72%, The Thief and the Cobbler with a 77%, or The Thief and the Cobbler, technically the... What the hell is it called?
Recobbled
cut with a 77%. Arabian Night with a 70%. Then we have Inside Out with a 79%. And Inside Out 2 with a 71%. Some good animated films here this week. So, folks, thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. Hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating. Or get the word out and tell a friend about us. And just a reminder that the Daily Ratings is completely producer-supported. We want to stay away from advertising, and we don't want to have any paywalls or tier structures or subscriptions. It's all just value for value. So, are you finding value in any of the things that we're doing here at the Daily Ratings? Then become a producer and donate whatever amount of value that is. Just go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com, and while you're there, be sure to check out the massive amount of films that Vince has rated. So thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.